Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. We are back here with our friend Kat Schwarz, who's here, of course, talking to us today. We're going to talk about holistic mental health care and what that looks like to you personally. But let's first start off with, if you don't mind, just a quick introduction, the name of your company and what you do.
Yes, hi. Good to see you as always. My name is Kat Schwarz. I'm a holistic healer. I am the owner and CEO, founder and CEO of Compassionate Healing Services, which is both my business and my mission. As an overarching theme, I would say my mission is holistic mental health care and suicide prevention.
All right. Well, we've talked about a lot of the other services you provide, and I know for today you want to get started and talk more about that holistic healthcare and what it looks like to you. Would you mind elaborating on that a little?
Absolutely. So last week, if you go back, and I hope you listen to all our previous episodes, but last week I really delved into the specific services that I personally offer. They're extremely unique. You're not going to find anyone else quite like me on the planet.
Yeah.
So today I want to talk about a little bit more what that looks like as far as in a comprehensive treatment plan. And first and foremost, I incorporate the whole person. And I mean the same thing when I say the entire person as Jesus meant when he said fully human. And that is to say that I am fully aware of the fact that I am both human and divine. Right.
Yeah.
I am at my core a internal spiritual or soul, an eternal energy. And I know that to be true of all of us, right? And it's something that is absolutely ignored in our
Yeah.
current care system. And in fact, the more spiritually gifted combined with traumatized you are, the more mental health symptoms you exhibit as a result of that, the less likely we are to listen to you, right?
Got
Because
it. Yeah.
we silence the very people, as I said last time, that we
Yep.
need to be listening to the most, right? So I take a very different approach, right? So, and I also incorporate, when I say holistic, I always mean it with W, whole, right? Meaning incorporating both of the best of Western medicine and of Eastern medicine, right? And integrating the two. And while I'm not in any way demonizing pharmaceuticals, there were certain times in my life where I required them for my own mental health journey. There are, my partner Alexandra still takes, a lot of tradition or some traditional pharmaceuticals, as well as supplementing with plant medicines like cannabis and things of that nature. So in no way am I saying that pharmaceuticals aren't a potential answer for some people, but it certainly, in my view, should not be the first line of defense. And I think we could start a lot earlier in the schools, for instance, with teaching people about their emotions, their emotional intelligence. We only focus on academic intelligence, right, rather than
Yeah.
intelligence. And we could have classes, and in my in my plan, this is what it's going to look like, where the school day incorporates, of course, the reading, the math, and the arithmetic, but also the social emotional learning piece. That's a big buzzword that we use in our schools these days, but how is that really changing the school day, right? And the answer so far is not dramatically, and I think it needs to be more dramatic. So I take a very personalized approach with every client that I see. I'm going to be looking at factors such as their ACE score. So let's go back. Last episode, I did go in much more depth about the ACEs study. I did want to touch today, though, on what that means to have an ACE score. There are 10 specific criteria that make up the ACE score, but you'll see that these are highly they're not even close to inclusive of all things that could be traumatizing to children, such as poverty, right? Children in poverty, homelessness, or things of that nature. But what the original ACE study did incorporate, and this was a study done in the early 90s by Kaiser Permanente, which was a health insurance company. They were only polling their insured clients, so right there, a privilege. The vast majority of those polled were white, were college educated, and were financially privileged. And they found still that the more than 2/3 of the respondents had sustained at least one adverse childhood event that was having or likely to be having a significant impact on their current mental and physical health or their nervous system development. Because what is notable about children is their developing system, their nervous systems are still developing,
Yep.
right? So the impacts of trauma on a developing nervous system are more severe over time than someone, let's say, who had a very stable, happy childhood and experienced one adverse event in adulthood. And we'll touch on that, what that looks like as far as PTSD versus complex PTSD, which is more of what we're focusing on here. So the 10 ACEs that were considered, there's five that are in the realm of household dysfunction. One is substance abuse by a parent, parental divorce, mental illness in the family, a mother being domestically abused, witnessing a battered mother, and criminal behavior, a parent put into jail. These are five factors that have been shown to have a significant impact long term on a child's development. In the realm of neglect, there's emotional and physical neglect. So a kid's emotional and physical needs not being met. That's where my trauma more lied. It was in the realm of neglect as opposed
Yeah.
to abuse, and then overt abuse, both physical, emotional, and sexual. So those are the factors that were looked at. If you're listening, you might be even say, hey, my parents were divorced and I had a parent with mental illness or substance abuse. And, maybe for the first time, considering that this trauma label might apply to them. Right. And that could be a really a life-saving and changing realization. So yeah, I'm going to look at a person's ACE score. Absolutely. When you come to me for mental health help, I'm going to look at their ethnic background. That it's a trauma to be a Black person in the United States,
Yeah.
right? Just, there is a layer of privilege that those of us who are white enjoy that we simply never think about, right? And that's just not the case for Black Americans. So I'm definitely going to look at their ethnic backgrounds and any factors that might be contributing to their current situation. Their social supports. What does their social support look like at home? Do they have a stable relationship with a partner or even their family members? That makes a huge difference, right? And if you don't have that, some of us don't have good relationships or any relationships with our
Yeah.
family. It's
Yeah.
out, you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick, right? So if you
Yeah.
had a very abusive childhood,
Oh,
and you're still those parents are still yours, right? And that family is still
true.
yours. So when that's not um a fact, when those social supports don't exist in the form of nuclear family or even extended family, as is the case for my partner, for instance, then it becomes even more important to build that safety network underneath you, whether it's in the form of friendships, even neighbors, right? Even the woman who cuts my fiance's hair every couple of
Oh,
days, right? I mean, this is part of your
group.
life-saving
Your.
social support because we're not
Mhm.
islands. We're just simply not. We're meant to be in community with one another and in relationship with one another. And the health of those relationships directly mirrors the health of your life, or the what feels good. It's going to be all about the health of your relationships, which for those of us who had complex trauma in our childhood is a huge obstacle to overcome, as we'll talk about. Um, I'm going to take into account their astrological chart. That's big. I don't personally read astrological charts, but I have my friend Mia is my go-to when it comes to either reading someone's personal chart or having two charts, like for a parent-child, for instance, or a romantic partnership read together and really seeing how the obstacles or challenges that you're facing might make perfect sense in the
Yeah.
realm of astrology, right? And then taking a look at their unique spiritual gifts, right? And how that can be impacting, as I said in an earlier episode with the clairaudience, where you're hearing voices outside of your body. We call that schizophrenia,
Yeah.
right? And we heavily medicate it. And that's a huge, huge problem. Because again, we're silencing the very voices that we need to hear most, you know? And yeah, So that's really what and as far as so the work that I personally offer, the ones that I talked about all last episode, the whether it's virtual coaching, whether it's Reiki, whether in person or virtual, whether it's yoga, the Reiki especially is very healing for the mental health and for the energy body. I'm it's not unusual for me to hear comments like I've healed more from a few sessions of Reiki than I did in years and years of therapy. Um, I definitely take pride in that. But when needed, of course, I'm going to refer. I just said I don't read my clients' astrological charts. I refer. I refer to licensed mental health professionals. I refer to people who are really, really good in their field. But I am always going to take a very unique and different approach. And that's going to be very, very client centered, right? Because at the end of the day, the client is the one who is the only one who can tell you what their experience is.
True.
Anything less, when we try to tell someone, whether it's a child
Mm,
who just fell and scraped their knee, that, oh, the pain's not as bad as you say it
yeah.
is, or, whether a child's emotionally reacting or whether an adult is emotionally reacting, and we say to them that, you're not feeling what you're feeling, that's a literal form of gaslighting.
Hmm.
The very thing that we're doing, the silencing of people who have extrasensory perception with these horribly these medications that can have horrible side effects. I know that from personal experience. um, Whether it's just the label of crazy, right, or bipolar as I got, or people in the mental health community and then society at large, especially in dysfunctional families, are always looking for that reason for why you're acting the way you're acting, or you're saying the things that you're saying that are making the family uncomfortable, right,
Yeah.
or airing dirty laundry, or even making psychiatrists uncomfortable who've never considered the fact that extrasensory perception might be real.
Yeah.
Right. So, but people are dying. The suicide rate is going up exponentially, and it has been since 2000. And there's a multifactorial reason for that we really need to consider the whole picture, right? And lean into the best of Eastern modalities, the best of Western modalities, destigmatize this extrasensory perception piece, which is very real, the energetic alignment piece, which is very real. The physical symptoms, whether they're mental health symptoms or physical body symptoms, are symptoms. They're not the underlying disease. The underlying disease is the trauma. The underlying disease is the stuck energy and the repressed emotions, potentially from, very early childhood.
Wow. And let me just remind everyone who we're speaking to, if you don't mind, Kat, sharing your contact information. We're about halfway through, so I just want to put it out there. If you're just tuning in, Kat
Yeah.
Shores, how do we reach out to you?
My email address is info@Compassionate Healing Services. My website is the first three letters, CHS, Compassionate Healing Services, yoga.com. And I can be reached via phone 856-334-0018.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're excited to have you here, and you've been very open about your own personal battles with mental health. We're just tuning in today for the first time, and clearly you came down this path of learning more of the holistic side of things, but you also had, could say the best of both worlds, right? Because you knew about medication, but there's always help for someone, and however it can happen. I know you're big into helping people, and what you do specifically. Would you mind sharing as your coaching, empowering, and could you explain it to our listeners? And you also have this intuitiveness about you. There's a lot of services that you do offer, Ms. Schwartz. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I do. I offer a host of unique services. So anywhere from traditional yoga, right, and meditation
Hmm.
instruction to Reiki, which can be done at a distance or in person if you live in near Medford, New Jersey. And I also offer something highly unique called spiritual and private investigation services, in which once I'm given some personal details about someone who's crossed over, I can call in a connection, and I call myself an evidential medium, and I'll present to you within a 2 to 4 week time period evidence of your loved one's continued presence. And I've been told told that it helps to transform the grieving process quite dramatically, right? When you realize that the person that you're grieving isn't actually gone, right? You're looking for them where they're not, which is their physical body, instead of finding where they are, which is your heart chakra,
Yeah.
right? And I know that sounds hokey. Oh, they're in your heart. I don't mean that in a way of like, hold them in your heart, their memories. No, I literally mean that the heart chakra
Heart
is
chakra
your
is, yep.
bridge between those, two parts of you, the physical you, the body that is you, and this energy, this soul, this higher, this God source energy, which is not above us, it's within us,
Yep.
right? When when you take those factors into account, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought a
It's
little bit.
okay. When you take
But
those factors into account,
it's gonna happen. I'm imperfect, and I have complex PTSD and a stressful, highly stressful personal life. So I do the best I can. But I hope I answered your question there as regards to the services that I offer. And to your point, I did come to this as a experientially, right, as someone who was told I was crazy, mentally ill. Now I label myself as crazy if you go back and listen to earlier episodes, because I want to own that label as fine. If the fact that I believe that I'm in fact not just this human body, and that I have the ability to tap into this higher
call
knowing,
it what you may. Yep.
call it what you want. But all I know is my mental health has gotten significantly better since I've embraced these realities instead of shun them as I did for 18 years and as an atheist. So I do actually have a lot of compassion for someone who comes to this with a lot of skepticism, because I used to be you. And I used to, it used to be that if you couldn't explain something to me with a scientific method, I didn't want to hear it. And now I see and experience miracles, and I mean that word literally every single day. So, I don't believe that I'm connected to this higher power. I know I am, or this inner power, really. I know I am. And I know the same of all of you. But I also know that there are many factors, such as what I touched on racially, right? Or with social supports or financial abilities, or even someone like my partner with very, very severe trauma. She was a survivor of human trafficking from Chile, part of the Chilean Babies of Silence. And that has had tremendously severe impacts that, in and of her, in and of themselves, these individuals, we have to stop putting the burden on individuals to solve societal problems. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my goal, is to build a survival network for people like my partner, and even me too, as her partner, right? Because the effects of that, we can talk in general terms about the ACEs research, and right, when you have moderate trauma, it makes sense that you have moderate, physical illness or mental illness. For me, that brought me to the brink of suicidality. I had moderate trauma, and yet in 2017, I spent a good 6 months trying to figure out how I could possibly stay here. And the answer was to completely change the approach I was taking, right, and do things completely differently. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. So, and I like the saying, if you drown in 7 feet of water or 20 feet of water, you're still dead, right? So
Yeah.
so even moderate trauma can have very, very severe impacts. But of course, severe trauma, right? My partner lives with what's called borderline personality disorder. It's a terribly named disorder. I think it puts so much shame and stigma on the sufferer of these terrible symptoms. And it is it's a diagnosis that specifically is at much higher risk for suicide, because the person has, from truly in Alex's case, the moment of birth, experienced such severe trauma and truly never felt safe throughout the entire development of her nervous system. She was not safe for the entire development of her nervous system. And that the impacts of that are very severe, as far as, and this is the difference. I'll go into the difference between complex PTSD and PTSD, right? So PTSD is that situation. PTSD, I heard a psychiatrist say once, PTSD is a terrible event, develops as the result of a terrible event, and complex PTSD develops as the result of a terrible life. And I was diagnosed with complex PTSD in 2017. once I started understanding that what had happened to me was traumatic and therefore started treating the trauma, the underlying trauma, all of my mental health symptoms or bipolar symptoms disappeared. I don't take any medication for that. The only medication I personally take is cannabis, plant medicine. Um, for Alex, the trauma was much more severe, right? And so PTSD is a terrible event. Complex PTSD is the result of a terrible life. So what that has looked like for her, and the difference typically is in what happens in relationships. So someone with complex PTSD, such as myself, such as Alex, and Alex has the much more severe manifestation of that. I truly believe that everyone with BPD has complex PTSD, but not everyone with complex PTSD has BPD, if that makes sense. So the BPD is the much more severe
Mm-hmm.
manifestation of it,
Yep.
because and it almost always involves a severe either literal abandonment of a primary attachment relationship. Your attachment relationship is to your biological parents, for better or worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alex was quite literally stolen out of her mother's
Ah,
her birth mother's arms and sold to an abusive family. So there was a disruption with both of her attachment relationships. And what that's caused is what that has caused is a severe reaction in her nervous system to what most people would consider relatively minor triggers, whether that be noises, whether that be the perceived lying or mistruth from a partner, or just a person making simple mistakes, right? Being a few minutes late, or not calling when you said you would call. And when anything like that triggers her nervous system, or anyone with BPD, it's such an excruciating experience for them
mm,
emotionally. Intensity of what they're experiencing is so severe that their brain literally can't tell the difference between you and their abusers in the past.
yep.
There's a splitting that occurs, and a devaluation where you go from being, almost this put on a pedestal of the best person this person has ever met, to the worst person they've ever met, right? So it's a real roller coaster for both parties. And it's something that BPD I've come to absolutely love, not just my partner, but anyone who has suffered with such severe um trauma and abuse and disruption in their relationships throughout their entire lives, and still is brave enough to try to love. Right? And to enter these relationships with the hope that maybe this time it will be different. And so much of what I have come to know is needed. Alex's BPD is so, I would even call her, I would maybe even label it complex BPD,
Yeah.
because her trauma was so uniquely severe. But she has, through a lot of different expensive costly treatments, including ketamine infusions. She gets ketamine infusions at least every 3 weeks, sometimes sooner. She got
Wow.
infusions over the summer. They're very costly, especially when they're also paired with talk therapy. Cannabis is very, very expensive, even though it shouldn't be. We should all be able to grow it, in my opinion, but that's very, very expensive. She takes pharmaceuticals. She has Medicaid insurance, which isn't perfect in what it covers. So there's been so much that we've had to put out of pocket just to save her life. And I recognize that that would not have been possible without me being in the unique position I am, with in my 40s, with a business underneath me, and the ability and maturity, frankly, spiritually and emotionally, to handle what's come at both of us. And it's given me a real passion for making sure that survival is not a privilege. Right? Because when somebody comes to me in dire need, I mean that dire need, right? And I have to be selective at this point until I've raised a lot more money. But, I'm not going to ask you first, the first question on like a hospital that you walk into isn't going to be, how are you going to pay for this? Right.
Yeah.
So, because we're all coming with much different, income brackets, celebrities or people with, more money than they could ever spend commit suicide too, right? And have severe mental health issues too, right? So
Yeah.
it's not a matter of, someone's not being able to pay necessarily, that they haven't discovered different methods like I offer of how to treat mental health, but that so many people just aren't viewing it in the way I am, right? So for some people it might be a matter of not being able to pay, and for other people they're going to be able to maybe pay pay so much that it'll
Yeah.
cover people that
Can't
being
afford.
free of charge to them, because I certainly need to be paid, and I need my the people I refer to be compensated as well. But I do believe in the ability for us to treat everyone who comes through our doors, or virtually even, without cost being an obstacle or a barrier.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Wow. You spoke amazingly today, as you always do. We still have 2 minutes left, but it's like, wow, the whole time.
Well, you
You
know
got it
what?
down.
Thank you. I will take that compliment, because I shared with you when we first got logged on, that my older son has COVID as of this morning. So this is now the third time we're dealing with this as a family, and it's so I keep saying to my partner, life keeps finding ways to challenge me to be at the top of my game professionally when life is anything but easy, right? So I guess this is a good classroom.
So true. Absolutely. And if we do want to reach out to you, could you please share the best form, all forms of contact? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. It's my website is www.chs, that stands for Compassionate Healing Services, yoga.com. Although I offer so much more than yoga, it's just the web address still is that. Excuse me. My Instagram is at Compassionate Healing Services. You can also email me, info@Compassionate Healing Services, and the phone number is 856-334-0018.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here, for joining us, and looking forward to next week if we're back on, and we'll be in touch, and hopefully we'll get to do a
Yeah.
session in between. And I'll
I have
talk
your
to you
number
soon.
now. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. Have a great day, Kat. Pleasure speaking with you. And thank you again for always being so open and making us all feel at ease, because no one's life is perfect. Nobody has it perfect. And
Totally
we all
fine.
could use some help. Thank you. My
Okay.
regards to Alex. Have a great day. And
Thank
your
you.
son, too. Good luck. Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.